Far out beyond the asteroid belt, in the cold, quiet light of distant Jupiter, there is a world that simply stopped. Callisto. A moon so still that its face has not changed in 4 billion years. Every scar it carries was carved when the solar system was young, and nothing has healed since. Tonight we drift slowly across the oldest surface ever found, a frozen record of how everything began. If these calm journeys help you rest, a like and a quiet subscribe help others find this place in the dark too. And before we begin, I would love to know, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it where you are? Let us begin by traveling far, farther than the warm familiar planets, farther than the red dust of Mars, farther than the wide silent gap where broken rock drifts in the dark. We are going all the way out to Jupiter, the largest world in our solar system, a giant the color of cream and amber and storm. And once we arrive, we will not stop at the giant itself. We will keep going past the inner moons, past the fierce ones, all the way to the quiet outer edge of Jupiter's family, where a single grey world turns slowly in the cold. This is Callisto. And of all the places we could choose to rest tonight, this may be the most peaceful, because Callisto is a world that long ago stopped changing and simply learned to be still. Imagine the sunlight here. At this distance, the sun is no longer the warm, bright disk we know from home. It is a small, fierce point, brilliant but tiny, throwing only a faint, pale light across everything. Daytime on Callisto is a kind of dim silver dusk. Shadows stretch long and soft. The ground holds a muted glow, more like moonlight than sunshine, and the sky above is black even at noon, scattered with unblinking stars. Jupiter itself hangs in that sky, enormous and patient, its bands of cloud turning so slowly that you could watch for an hour and barely see them move. There is no sound. There is no wind. There is only the vast, slow turning of a moon that has kept this same calm posture for longer than almost anything we can imagine. Callisto is large. It is the second largest of Jupiter's moons and the third largest moon in the entire solar system, nearly the size of the planet Mercury. If you stood upon it, the horizon would curve away gently in every direction, grey and softly rolling, dusted with a fine dark material like ancient soot mixed into old ice. The gravity beneath your feet would be light, only a small fraction of what holds you to your bed tonight. A single slow step would carry you farther than you expect. Everything here moves gently. Everything here takes its time. It is a place that seems built for patience. And patience is the truest word for Callisto, because the thing that makes this moon so extraordinary is not what it does, it is what it has not done. For roughly 4 billion years, this surface has barely changed. Think about that softly for a moment. 4 billion years. A span of time so long that our minds cannot really hold it, only gesture toward it. In that time, the earth was born young and molten, and then cooled, grew oceans, grew life, grew forests and creatures and us. Continents drifted and collided and drifted again. Mountains rose and were worn flat by rain. Entire seas appeared and vanished. The face of our home was remade 10,000 times over, and through all of it, out here in the dark, Callisto simply held still. The same craters, the same shadows, The same quiet grey plains, waiting, unchanged, while history happened everywhere else. This is why we have come. Not for drama, because there is none here. Not for danger, because Callisto is one of the safest large worlds in the whole system. We have come because Callisto is a place that remembers. It is a frozen page from the very beginning of the solar system, kept exactly as it was written, untouched by the erasing forces that smoothed away the past on almost every other world. To wander across Callisto is to walk through the deepest memory we have, a landscape that has been waiting 4 billion years for someone to notice it. For most of human history, of course, no one could. Callisto was not even known to exist. For all the long ages of our species, when people looked up at the night and saw Jupiter, they saw only a single bright wandering star, a steady amber light moving slowly against the fixed pattern of the constellations. They named it for the king of their gods, because it was the most stately of the wandering lights, but they never dreamed it carried moons. The moons were too faint and too close to that brilliant point to be seen with the unaided eye. They were hidden in the glare, 4 small worlds circling in the dark, completely unknown. Then, in the winter of 1610, a man in Italy pointed a small new instrument at the sky, and everything changed. Galileo Galilei had built himself a telescope, a simple tube with 2 pieces of curved glass, weak by the standards of any modern child's toy, yet powerful enough to do something no human had ever done. He turned it toward Jupiter, and beside the bright planet he saw 3 tiny stars arranged in a neat line. He thought little of them at first, but the next night he looked again, and the little stars had moved, and the next night they had moved once more. Over the following days he watched, patient and astonished, as these points of light shifted back and forth, sometimes 3 of them, sometimes 4, always staying near Jupiter, dancing around it in a slow and orderly way. Slowly the truth settled over him. These were not stars at all. They were moons, worlds in their own right, circling another planet just as our own moon circles the Earth. It was a quiet observation made on cold nights through a small glass tube, and yet it shook the foundations of how people understood the heavens. For the first time, here was plain, visible proof that not everything in the sky moved around the Earth. Other worlds had their own companions. The cosmos was larger and stranger, and more crowded than anyone had believed. Those 4 points of light became known as the Galilean moons, and the outermost of them, the most distant and the most patient, was Callisto. For centuries after that night, though, Callisto remained little more than a moving speck. Through the telescopes of the 1600s and 1700s and 1800s, it was a tiny disk at best, a faint grey coin too small to show any real detail. Astronomers tracked its orbit and measured its brightness and slowly worked out its size, and they learned that it was large and that it was probably icy, but its actual face remained a mystery. No one could see the craters. No one could see the great rings or the ancient plains. For all that time, Callisto kept its true expression hidden, a closed book held just out of reach. It was not until our own age, the age of spacecraft, that the book finally opened. Robotic travelers crossed the enormous gulf between the planets and at last came close enough to truly see. They sent home the first real pictures, and there, where there had only ever been a smudge of grey, a face appeared, and what a face it was! Pitted and pocked and crowded from edge to edge with craters, more craters than anyone had ever seen on a single world, a surface so completely covered in the marks of ancient impacts that there was scarcely room for one more. It was, the scientists realized, the most heavily cratered surface in the entire solar system. Nowhere else, on no other moon or planet, was the ground so thoroughly written over with the record of bombardment. Callisto wore every blow it had ever received, and it had received a great many. Tonight we are going to walk slowly across that face. We are going to drift over its plains and peer into its great basins and trace the long, faint chains of its craters. We are going to feel the deep stillness of a world without weather, without wind, without the restless churn that defines almost every place we know. And as we go, we will let the strangeness of it soothe rather than unsettle us, because there is something deeply calming about a place that has found such complete and lasting peace. Callisto does not strive. Callisto does not rush. Callisto simply rests, and has rested since before the earth had oceans, and will go on resting long after tonight has faded into memory. Let us settle, then, into the journey. Picture yourself drifting down toward that grey surface, slowly, so slowly, the way a feather settles through still air. The faint sunlight catches the rims of countless craters, throwing soft shadows that pool in their hollows. The ground rises to meet you, ancient and patient, every ridge and basin holding the imprint of a moment that happened 4 billion years ago and was never touched again. There is no hurry here. There has never been any hurry here. Out at the calm edge of Jupiter's family, on the oldest face in the solar system, time itself seems to have lain down to sleep, and we have come a very long way, across all that cold and all that dark, simply to lie down beside it. Before we go further, let us hold in our minds the sheer scale of the place, because it will help everything that follows feel real. Callisto is more than 4,800 kilometers across, a sphere wide enough to stretch across a continent if you set it down on Earth. It circles Jupiter at a great distance, nearly 2 million kilometers out, which is far enough that the giant planet, though still vast in Callisto's sky, no longer dominates everything. The Moon takes about 17 of our days to complete a single orbit, drifting around its giant in a slow and stately loop. And like our own Moon, it always shows the same face to the world it circles, turning once on its axis for every loop it makes, so that one hemisphere forever looks toward Jupiter and the other forever looks away into open space. The material of Callisto is a near equal mixture of rock and ice, which gives the whole world a curious lightness. It is heavy enough to hold its round shape and to keep its quiet grip on anything that lands, yet it is far less dense than the rocky planets of the inner system, because so much of it is simply frozen water. In a sense, Callisto is a great ball of dirty ice and stone, dim and cold, holding within it the chill of the outer dark. The surface temperature is brutally low, far below anything found in the coldest winter on Earth, cold enough that the ice there is as hard and unyielding as rock, cold enough that it behaves not like the soft ice of a frozen pond, but like solid stone that simply happens to be made of water. And upon that hard, cold surface, every mark endures. This is the heart of what makes Callisto such a perfect keeper of memory. On a warm and living world, the past is constantly being erased. Rain wears it down, wind buries it, rivers carry it away, living things churn the soil and remake the ground. But here there is none of that. No rain has ever fallen, no wind has ever blown, no river has ever run, nothing grows and nothing decays, and so whatever happens to the surface of Callisto stays written there, sharp and clear for ages without end. A crater, carved 4 billion years ago, looks much as it did the day it formed. The moon forgets nothing, because it has no way to forget. So, as we begin our slow descent into this quiet grey world, hold that thought gently, like a warm stone in the hand. We are not visiting a dead place. We are visiting a faithful one. A world that has kept watch over the oldest chapter of our cosmic story, holding it carefully through 4 billion years of silence, waiting in the cold and the dim light for us to arrive at last. Let your breathing slow to match its patience. Let the long calm of Callisto settle over you. There is nothing here that needs to be solved tonight, nothing that needs to be hurried, nothing that needs anything from you at all. There is only the soft grey light and the endless quiet, and a world at perfect rest, ready to share its long memory with anyone willing to come this far into the dark and simply be still. Let us pause here and let the imagination carry us a little closer to what it would be like to actually stand upon this world. The ground beneath you would be hard, harder than you might expect from something made so largely of ice, because in this deep and abiding cold the ice has none of the softness we know from home. It does not crunch like fresh snow or give way like the surface of a frozen lake in early spring. It is locked solid, rigid as granite, so cold that a drop of water from your own warm world would freeze before it could even begin to fall. Your footsteps would leave no prints, for there is no soft snow to take them. The dust might shift faintly underfoot, the fine dark grime that coats the surface, but the ice itself would hold firm, unyielding, ancient, a floor that has not been disturbed in longer than the mind can hold. Above you, the sky would be the deepest black, untroubled by any blue, for there is almost no air to scatter the faint sunlight into colour. The stars would shine steady and unblinking, sharp points of light strewn across the dark, and they would not twinkle as they do through the restless air of earth, because here there is no restless air to make them dance. They would simply hang there, fixed and brilliant and serene, and dominating all of it, filling a great portion of the sky on the hemisphere that faces it, would be Jupiter, vast beyond easy description, a striped and swirling giant the colour of cream and rust and pale gold, turning so slowly and so massively that it would seem less like a planet and more like a painted ceiling stretched across the heavens, always there, always watching, always still. The silence would be the most profound thing of all. On earth, even the quietest night is full of sound, the faint stir of air, the distant hush of movement, the small noises of a living world. But on Callisto there is no air to carry sound, and nothing that moves to make it. The silence is total, complete, a silence older than the earth itself, a silence that has lain unbroken over these plains for 4 billion years. It is not an empty silence, though. It is a full one, a deep and patient quiet, the silence of a world that has said everything it needs to say and is content now simply to rest. Standing in it, You would feel time itself slow around you, the frantic clock of ordinary life winding down to the long, deep tempo of the moon, where 1,000 years is a breath and nothing at all is in any kind of hurry. This, then, is the place we have come to, a great grey sphere of ice and rock, lit by faint distant sunlight, crowned by a giant planet, wrapped in total silence, holding its ancient face unchanged across an unimaginable span of time. It was hidden from us for all of human history but for the last few centuries, and seen clearly only in the last few decades, and still it keeps most of its secrets folded quietly away. Tonight, we are among the fortunate few who have come to know it, who have travelled in mind all the way to the calm, far edge of Jupiter's family, to meet the stillest world we know. And as we settle into this long, slow journey across its memory, there is nothing to fear and nothing to solve, only the soft grey light to drift through and the deep abiding peace of Callisto to share. A peace it has held faithfully since before the oceans of the earth were born. It is worth dwelling, too, on the company Callisto keeps, for it is the outermost of 4 remarkable worlds, and its position at the edge gives it a special character. Closest to Jupiter rides Io, fierce and burning. Beyond Io comes Europa, smooth and bright and wrapped in ice. Beyond Europa comes Ganymede, the largest moon in the whole solar system, grand and grooved. And then, farthest of all, comes Callisto, the quiet one, the patient one, drifting at the calm outer edge, where Jupiter no longer dominates everything. These 4 were the first moons ever discovered beyond our own, and together they form a family unlike any other. A giant planet and its 4 great children, each one a world in its own right, each one utterly different from the rest. Callisto is the eldest in spirit, the one that changed the least, the keeper of the family's deepest memory. From Callisto's distance, Jupiter is still a magnificent sight, but the moon is far enough out that it feels less like a captive and more like a quiet observer, watching the giant and its inner moons from a calm remove. The inner 3 are caught up in their endless dance, flexed and heated and never resting. Callisto looks on from the edge, untouched, serene, free of the rhythm that drives them. There is a sense, when you picture it this way, of a wise and ancient elder seated a little apart from the restless activity of the young, content to be still, content to watch, content simply to remember. That is the posture Callisto has held for 4 billion years, and it is the posture we are invited to share tonight, settling a little apart from the rush of the day, growing quiet, growing still, content simply to be. Let us look now at the face of Callisto, slowly, the way you might study the lines on the hands of someone very old, because that is what this surface is. It is a face full of lines, full of marks, full of the gentle evidence of a very long life. Every hollow and every ring and every faint circle is a story, and there are more stories written here than on any other world we know. When the first clear images came home and scientists looked upon Callisto in full, they reached for a particular word to describe what they saw. They called the surface saturated. It is a soft and useful word, and it is worth sitting with for a moment, because it tells you almost everything about this place. A surface becomes saturated with craters when it is so completely covered that there is no longer any room for more. Imagine a field of fresh snow, smooth and untouched. Now imagine footprints beginning to appear, one here, one there, scattered and clear. For a while you can count them, but as more and more footprints fall, they begin to overlap, to crowd together, to land on top of one another, until at last the whole field is nothing but a churn of overlapping prints, and a new footstep can no longer find empty snow. It can only fall upon old prints, erasing them as it makes its own mark. That is saturation. The field is full, and Callisto reached that state long, long ago. This is the quiet astonishment of the place. Callisto is so thoroughly cratered that new impacts can no longer add to the count in any real sense. They can only destroy what is already there. The surface has been written over so many times that it has reached a kind of balance, an equilibrium of damage, where every fresh blow simply erases an older one. For a world to reach this state, it must have endured an enormous span of bombardment, and it must have done nothing in all that time to wipe the slate clean. No fresh lava to flood the craters, no shifting ground to swallow them, no erosion to soften them away, only patient, endless accumulation until the surface could hold no more. Most of these craters were carved in a single distant age, in the first wild stretch of the solar system's life. In those early times, the space around the young planets was thick with debris, with chunks of rock and ice left over from the building of the worlds, all of it flying through the dark on crossing paths. Collisions were common. Worlds were pelted constantly, struck again and again by the leftover rubble of their own creation. This was the great bombardment, a long and violent youth that every world endured. And then, slowly, the debris thinned. The crossing orbits were swept clean, the rain of impacts faded to a trickle, the solar system grew calm. On most worlds, the scars of that early storm were later erased by volcanoes or oceans, or the slow grinding of geology. But on Callisto, they remained. The moon kept them all. To look at Callisto today is to look directly at the aftermath of that ancient storm, frozen in place, as fresh in its way as the day the rain finally stopped. Let us drift now toward the greatest of all the marks on Callisto, the feature that draws the eye from far away. It is a vast, bright bullseye, stretching across an enormous reach of the surface, ring upon ring upon ring, spreading outward from a single bright center, like the ripples that spread across a still pond when a stone is dropped, except that these ripples were frozen the moment they formed and have held their shape for 4 billion years. This is Valhalla, named for the great hall of the old northern myths, and it is one of the largest impact structures in the entire solar system. Picture the moment of its making, gently, without alarm. Long ago, a great body, perhaps many kilometers wide, came in out of the dark and struck Callisto with unimaginable force. The blow released a flash of energy beyond anything we could witness, and the surface, hard and cold and brittle, responded the way still water responds to a falling stone. A series of waves rose and spread outward from the point of impact, vast circular ridges racing across the frozen ground. And because Callisto is so cold and so rigid, because nothing here flows or heals, those waves did not settle back into smoothness. They froze where they stood. The bright central scar and the great rings rippling outward from it remain to this day, a record of a single instant of violence, preserved with perfect patience, the loudest thing that ever happened here, held now in absolute silence. Valhalla is enormous. Its bright central region alone spans hundreds of kilometers, and the faint rings ripple outward across a region thousands of kilometers wide, nearly reaching around a meaningful portion of the moon. If you stood at its center, the innermost rings would rise around you like the gentlest of hills, and the farther rings would lie beyond the horizon entirely, unseen, curving away over the edge of the world. It is too large to take in from the ground. It can only be truly seen from far above, from out in space, where the whole pattern reveals itself, a great frozen ripple spreading across the grey, beautiful and still and impossibly old. And Valhalla is not alone. Elsewhere on Callisto lies a second great ringed structure, quieter and more weathered, called Asgard, named for another realm of the same old myths. Asgard too is a bullseye of concentric rings spreading from a bright center. Though it is smaller and softer than mighty Valhalla, its rings more subdued, as though it formed in a slightly different age or struck a slightly different ground. To wander between Valhalla and Asgard is to move between two frozen echoes of catastrophe, two places where the moon once rang like a struck bell and then held that ringing forever, the sound long gone, but the shape of it preserved in stone and ice. Beyond the great basins, the surface of Callisto is crowded with craters of every size, from broad bowls many kilometers across down to small sharp pits at the very limit of what our cameras can see. They lie upon one another, overlapping, intersecting, older craters broken by the rims of younger ones, the whole landscape a dense tapestry of circles within circles. In the faint sunlight, their rims catch the light, while their floors lie in pooled shadow, so that the ground takes on a soft texture, a gentle roughness that stretches unbroken to every horizon. There are no smooth plains here, no flat, untouched expanses. Everywhere you look, the surface is busy with the quiet record of impact. Among these countless craters are some of the strangest features on the moon. Long straight lines of small craters arranged in neat rows, like beads on a string or footprints marching across the ground. These are the crater chains, and one of the most striking of them carries the name Gipul-Catena. They are puzzling and lovely things. A chain of craters in a perfect line is not what a random rain of debris would produce. Something orderly made them. The gentle answer that scientists have found is this. Sometimes a comet, on its long journey through the system, passes too close to mighty Jupiter, and the giant's enormous gravity pulls the fragile, icy body apart, tearing it into a string of smaller pieces that continue along nearly the same path, strung out in a line like a broken necklace. And then, if that string of fragments happens to strike a moon, each piece carves its own crater, and the craters fall in a row, recording the shape of the shattered comet in the ground. The crater chains of Callisto are the frozen fingerprints of comets that came apart near Jupiter and then came down, one fragment after another, in a quiet, ordered procession across the ancient ice. There is something deeply moving in all of this, if you let yourself feel it softly. Every single mark on Callisto, from the towering rings of Valhalla to the smallest pit, is the record of a particular moment. Each crater is a memory of one specific arrival, one body out of the dark, one instant of contact, one event that happened once and never again. On a living world, those moments would be lost, washed away, and forgotten within a geological breath. But here they are all kept. The moon holds them the way a careful keeper holds a collection, each one labelled by its place and its shape and its overlapping neighbours, a vast archive of single moments stretching back to the dawn of the planets. Callisto does not tell its story in words. It tells it in circles, written across its whole grey face, every one a sentence, every one a memory, every one a quiet record of the day the sky came down. As we drift across this crowded ancient ground, notice how the crowding itself becomes a kind of calm. There is no sense of recent violence here, no fresh wound, no smoke or fire. The bombardment ended billions of years ago. What remains is only the gentle aftermath, the soft grey record, the craters lying quietly in the dim light, their edges rounded slightly by the slow passage of ages. It is like walking through a very old battlefield long after the battle, when the grass has grown over everything and all that remains is the gentle undulation of the ground, peaceful now, telling its story only to those who pause to listen. Callisto's whole surface is like that. A field of old quiet wounds, healed into stillness, beautiful in the soft light, holding its memories without pain. Let your eye travel once more across the great rings of Valhalla, those frozen ripples spreading silently toward the horizon. Let it rest in the shadowed bowl of a single crater, one of millions, each one a moment held. Let it follow the neat march of a crater chain across the plain, the broken comet's last quiet signature. This is the face of the oldest surface in the solar system, and it is a face entirely at peace. Everything that could happen to it has already happened. The storms are over. The bombardment is done. All that is left is the record, kept faithfully in the cold, and the deep grey silence in which it rests. There is nothing here to fear, and nothing here to fix. There is only the long, patient memory of a world that wore every blow and kept every mark, and then, when the rain of fire finally ended, simply lay down in the dim light and held perfectly still. Let us linger a while longer among the craters, for they reward slow attention. Notice how they come in every size, a whole population of circles nested and overlapping across the ground. There are the giants, broad and shallow, their floors wide enough to swallow a city, their rims worn low and gentle by the ages. There are the middling ones, neat round bowls with raised edges, clean and clear, each one the perfect signature of a single ancient blow. And there are the small ones, countless and crowded, sharp little pits scattered everywhere between the larger marks, filling in the spaces, completing the dense tapestry until there is no patch of ground that has not been touched. To stand among them would be to stand within a record so complete that the eye could never count it all, a field of memory stretching unbroken to every horizon. And notice, too, how the craters tell time by the way they overlap. When one crater cuts across the rim of another, breaking its edge, you know at once which came first. The broken one is older, for it was already there when the second blow fell upon it. In this simple way, the surface keeps not only the record of each impact, but the order of them, a sequence written in overlapping circles, the younger marks laid clearly over the older ones. Scientists read this sequence like the rings of an ancient tree, working out which features came before which, piecing together the long, slow history of bombardment from the patient evidence of what lies on top of what. The whole face of Callisto is a kind of layered manuscript, each crater a line, the overlaps telling the order, the entire story of an age of falling debris preserved in stone and ice. Some of the craters wear a curious brightness, a paler ring or a scattered splash of lighter material around them. These are the younger marks, where a more recent impact punched through the dark, dusty surface and threw up fresher, cleaner ice from below, ice that had not yet been darkened by the slow ages of exposure. Around such craters the ground is brighter, a pale halo against the grey, the exposed ice still gleaming faintly where it was flung out by the blow. Over time, even this brightness will fade, as the fresh ice slowly darkens and the dust settles once more. But for now, these brighter craters stand out gently against the older, darker plains, the most recent entries in a very long book. The great rings of Valhalla deserve one more slow look before we move on, for there is nothing else quite like them. Stand in imagination at the bright center, the place where the great body struck and turned slowly around. The innermost rings rise near you, low arcs of frozen ground curving away. Beyond them, fainter rings spread outward, ripple after ripple, growing softer and lower as they go, until the farthest of them lie far beyond the horizon, unseen, curving around a great portion of the moon. It is a structure so vast that no eye on the ground could ever take it in. It can only be known from above, or imagined whole in the mind. And to imagine it whole is to picture the moment of its making, the single instant when the surface rang like a struck bell, and the waves spread out and then froze, holding the shape of that ancient ringing for 4 billion silent years. There is a deep gentleness in realizing that all this violence is long over. The bodies that carved these craters are gone, swept from the sky ages ago. The great bombardment ended before the first simple life stirred in the seas of the young earth. What remains on Callisto is not violence, but the memory of violence, softened by time into something peaceful, a field of old quiet marks, lying still in the dim light. It is like the gentle hollows left in an ancient meadow long after whatever made them has been forgotten, the ground undulating softly, holding its shapes without pain. Callisto carries its scars the way a calm old face carries its lines, not as wounds but as a record of a long life fully lived, every mark a memory, every memory at peace. Consider the crater chains once more, those neat lines of small pits marching across the plains, for they are among the most poetic features here. Each chain is the last signature of a comet that came apart, torn into a string of fragments by the gravity of Jupiter, and then strung across the ground, one piece at a time. To trace such a chain with the eye is to read the final moments of a single broken traveler, the fragments falling in order, the craters recording their march, a shattered necklace laid gently upon the ice and kept there for ages. There is a tenderness in it, the thought that even the death of a comet, a thing that wandered the dark for who knows how long, was preserved here, written carefully into the surface of a moon that forgets nothing. And in all of this lies the deepest truth of Callisto's crowded face. Every mark is singular. Every crater records one moment that happened once and never again, one body out of the dark, one instant of contact. Nowhere else are so many single moments kept so faithfully in one place. The earth has forgotten almost all of its ancient blows, erased them with water and wind and the slow churn of its restless crust. But Callisto kept them all, every one, a vast and patient archive of singular instants reaching back to the dawn of the planets. To drift across this face is to drift across the most complete memory in the solar system, a surface that holds, in quiet circles written edge to edge, the whole long story of an age of falling fire, now ended, now silent, now utterly and beautifully at peace. Let your eye rest now on a single crater, just one out of the countless millions, and stay with it a while. See how its rim rises gently in a soft ring, catching the faint light along one edge and falling into shadow along the other. See how its floor lies smooth and quiet, a shallow bowl that has held the same shape since the moment it formed. No water ever pooled there, no dust storm ever filled it, no later blow ever broke its edge. It simply waited, exactly as it is, through 4 billion years of silence, a single perfect record of a single ancient instant. And around it lie millions more, each one its own quiet keeper of its own quiet moment. The whole surface a vast and patient gathering of stillnesses, each one complete, each one at peace, each one holding faithfully the memory of the day. The sky came briefly down, and then was silent forever after. Now let us ask the gentlest and deepest question of all. Why? Why did Callisto stop? Why has this one world held so still for so long while everything around it moved and burned and cracked and changed? To understand the stillness of Callisto, it helps to meet its siblings, the other 3 great moons of Jupiter, because they are among the most restless and dramatic places in the whole solar system, and Callisto is their quiet opposite, the calm one at the far edge of the family. Closest to Jupiter, riding deep inside the giant's powerful grip, is Io. Io is a world on fire. It is the most volcanically active body known to exist, a moon covered in hundreds of erupting volcanoes, some of them throwing fountains of molten material hundreds of kilometers into space. Its surface is a riot of yellow and orange and black, painted in sulfur and fresh lava, constantly repaved by eruption after eruption. Io has almost no craters at all, because its surface is so young, remade again and again so quickly, that no impact scar survives for long. Where Callisto remembers everything, Io forgets everything, erasing its own face in a ceaseless churn of fire. Io is loud, Io is violent, Io never rests. Next, a little farther out, comes Europa, perhaps the most famous of the 4. Europa is a smooth, bright ball of ice, gleaming and pale, wrapped in a frozen shell that cracks and shifts and renews itself. Its surface is laced with long dark lines, great fractures in the ice where the shell has broken and moved and frozen again. Beneath that shell, scientists are nearly certain, lies a deep global ocean of liquid water, warmed and kept alive by the constant flexing of the moon. Europa, like Io, has very few craters, because its icy face is forever being renewed, the cracks healing and reforming, the surface young and restless and alive. Europa, too, is a world in motion, never holding still long enough to gather the marks of age. Then comes Ganymede, the largest moon in the entire solar system, larger even than the planet Mercury. Ganymede is a mixed world, part ancient dark cratered terrain and part younger bright grooved terrain, its surface carved with long parallel ridges and furrows where the ice once shifted and stretched. Ganymede has a measure of the stillness that Callisto has, and it carries old cratered regions of its own, but it has also clearly been reworked in places, its face partly remade by movement from within. It even generates its own magnetic field, a sign of a stirring, active interior. Ganymede is the great cousin, grand and complex, neither fully restless nor fully still. And then, at last, far beyond the others, comes Callisto, the quiet one, the still one, the one that did none of this. No volcanoes ever broke its surface. No fresh ice ever flooded its craters. No great grooves were carved across its plains by a shifting crust. While Io burned and Europa cracked and Ganymede stirred, Callisto simply held its ancient face unchanged, gathering crater upon crater, keeping every mark, doing nothing to wipe the record clean. It is the sibling that never joined the dance, and tonight we want to understand, softly, why. The answer lies in a thing called rhythm, a gravitational rhythm that binds the inner three moons together and leaves Callisto out. Io and Europa and Ganymede move in a beautiful locked pattern, a kind of cosmic timing in which their orbits are tied to one another in neat whole numbers. For every 4 loops that Io makes around Jupiter, Europa makes 2 and Ganymede makes 1. This neat relationship is called a resonance, and it means that the 3 moons pass and align with one another in the same places again and again, over and over, with perfect regularity. Each time they line up, they tug on one another gently with their gravity, always in the same direction, always at the same points in their orbits. And those small repeated tugs, added up across the ages, have a powerful effect. They pull the orbits of the inner moons into slightly stretched shapes, so that each moon swings a little closer to Jupiter, and then a little farther away on every loop. This stretching is the secret engine of all that inner restlessness. As each moon moves closer to Jupiter and then farther away, the giant's immense gravity squeezes and releases it, over and over, flexing the whole body like a ball of clay worked in the hands. That endless flexing generates heat deep inside, friction warming the interior from within. On Io, that tidal heating is so intense that the inside of the moon partly melts and the heat pours out through endless volcanoes. On Europa, it is gentler, but still enough to keep a vast ocean liquid beneath the ice, and to keep the shell above it cracking and renewing. On Ganymede, it once helped drive the movement that carved those long grooves. The locked rhythm of the 3 inner moons keeps them warm, keeps them active, keeps them young, keeps them constantly remaking their own faces. But Callisto sits outside that rhythm. It orbits too far out, and its loops are not tied into the neat pattern of the other 3. It is not caught in the resonance, and so it never receives the steady gravitational squeezing that warms its siblings. Its orbit is nearly a calm circle, not a stretched and flexing oval. Jupiter does not need it the way it needs the inner moons. And without that constant flexing, there is no engine of heat inside Callisto, no warmth to drive volcanoes, no warmth to melt the surface and flood the craters, no warmth to crack and renew the ice. Callisto is cold to its core in a way the others are not. It missed the rhythm, and so it missed the fire, and so it kept its ancient face. There is a quiet lesson in this, if we let ourselves feel it. The restlessness of the inner moons is not freedom. It is a kind of compulsion, an endless squeezing they cannot escape, driven by a gravitational drumbeat that never stops. They are remade again and again, whether they would choose it or not. Callisto, alone among them, was released from that drumbeat. It drifts in its calm, wide orbit, untouched by the relentless flexing, free to simply be what it is. And what it chose to be, across all those ages, was still. There is a kind of peace in Callisto that the burning, crowded inner moons will never know, the peace of a world that was left alone and used that solitude to rest. Because Callisto stayed cold, it also stayed simple in another remarkable way. On most large worlds, the heat of their early lives caused their insides to separate out, the heavy material like rock and metal sinking down to form a dense core, while the lighter material like ice and water rose toward the surface. This sorting is called differentiation, and it gives a world a layered structure, like the layers of an onion, neatly arranged by weight. But Callisto, it seems, never fully went through this sorting. It stayed cool enough, calm enough, that much of its interior remained a mixture, rock and ice still partly blended together, the way they were when the moon first gathered out of the cloud of debris around the young Jupiter. In its deep interior, Callisto may still hold the original recipe of its making, never stirred, never fully separated, a world that kept not only its surface, but its very insides close to the way they began. It is, in this sense, one of the most primitive large bodies in the solar system. Primitive not as an insult, but as a tribute, meaning original, untouched, close to the beginning. Think of what this means for the kind of place Callisto is to stand upon. There is no weather here, because there is no air to move and no heat to drive it. There is no erosion, because there is nothing to wear the ground away, no rain, no wind, no flowing water on the surface, no ice that creeps and grinds. There are no earthquakes from a shifting crust, because the crust does not shift. There are no mountains thrust up by colliding plates, because there are no plates, no great slabs of surface sliding against one another. There are no volcanoes, no lava, no fresh ground rising from below. There is nothing, in short, that renews the surface or destroys the past. Callisto has none of the engines of change that keep other worlds young, and so it has stayed old, gloriously and completely old, holding its first face across 4 billion years of solar system history. This is why time is visible on Callisto in a way it is not anywhere else. On most worlds, the past is hidden, buried under newer layers, erased by the constant work of change. You cannot see the ancient surface of the Earth, because the Earth has remade itself countless times and the oldest ground is mostly gone. But on Callisto, the ancient surface is the only surface. There is no newer layer on top. What you see is what was there at the beginning, more or less unchanged. To look at Callisto is to look directly into the deep past, with nothing in the way. It is a window with no curtain, open onto the dawn of the planets, and through it pours the dim, cold light of 4 billion years ago, still arriving, still here, still holding its shape. So let the stillness of this world settle into you now, softly, as something to be cherished rather than something strange. Callisto is not broken because it does not move. It is not dead because it does not burn. It is, instead, at rest, in the truest and most complete sense, a world that found its shape long ago and has held it in perfect peace ever since. It does not strive to be anything other than what it is. It does not erase its own history in a restless need for renewal. It simply remains calm and cold and faithful at the quiet far edge of Jupiter's bright and burning family. And there is no anxiety in that stillness, no loneliness, no loss. There is only the deep, abiding calm of a world that has been allowed, at last and for always, to simply lie still in the dark and rest. Let us dwell a little longer on this idea of the locked rhythm, because it is one of the most beautiful things in the whole Jupiter system, and understanding it makes Callisto's freedom all the more striking. Picture the three inner moons moving around their giant, each on its own loop, Io swift and close, Europa a little farther and slower, Ganymede farther still and slower yet. Now, picture them keeping time with one another, like three dancers who always return to the same positions in the same order. By the time Ganymede has made one full loop, Europa has made exactly 2, and Io has made exactly 4. They cannot drift out of this pattern, because their own gravity holds them in it, each gentle tug nudging them back into step whenever they begin to wander. It is a dance that has gone on for ages, and will go on for ages more, three worlds bound together in a rhythm none of them can break. This dance has a name. It is called the Laplace resonance, after the thinker who first described its mathematics, and it is a rare and elegant thing, a clockwork of moons keeping perfect time around a giant. But for all its beauty, it is also a kind of prison, because the same locking that keeps the dance so orderly is the very thing that squeezes the inner moons and heats them and drives all their restless activity. The dance is what melts the inside of Io. The dance is what keeps the ocean of Europa liquid and its shell cracking. The three inner moons are caught in a rhythm that will not let them rest, flexed and heated, and remade forever by the timing of their own steps. Callisto stands outside this dance entirely. Its loop is too far out, too slow, and it never fell into step with the inner three. It keeps no time with them. It feels no repeated tug pulling it into a stretched and flexing orbit. It simply drifts around Jupiter on its own calm, nearly circular path, free of the rhythm, free of the squeezing, free of the heat that the dance would bring. And because of that freedom, it stayed cold. And because it stayed cold, it stayed still. And because it stayed still, it kept its ancient face. The very thing that makes Callisto seem lonely, its distance, its exclusion from the great moon dance, is also the thing that gave it its deep and lasting peace. It was left out, and in being left out, it was left alone to rest. There is a quiet wisdom in this that is worth carrying with you into sleep. The restless moons are not free, for all their fire and motion. They are driven, squeezed without pause by a rhythm they cannot escape, remade again and again whether they would choose it or not. Callisto, the still one, the excluded one, is the only one truly at liberty, free to simply be what it is, unhurried, unforced, unchanged. Sometimes what looks like being left behind is really being set free. Sometimes the quietest place, the one apart from all the striving and the motion, is the one most fully at peace. Callisto drifts at the calm far edge of the dance, asking nothing, driven by nothing, and in its stillness it has found a kind of freedom that its burning siblings, locked forever in their beautiful, relentless rhythm, will never know. Consider, too, how completely this stillness shapes the daily reality of the moon, if a world without weather can be said to have a daily reality at all. There is no season here, for Callisto does not tilt and tumble through a year of changing light the way the earth does. There is no storm, no cloud, no shifting sky. The same craters lie in the same shadows through age after age, The same rings of Valhalla spread across the same plains. A visitor returning after 1,000,000 years would find the scene unchanged, every feature in its place, the moon holding the identical expression it held when the visitor last looked upon it. There is a profound steadiness in this, a constancy almost beyond imagining, a world that simply is what it is and remains what it is, faithful and unchanging in the long, cold dark. And in its deep interior, that same steadiness reigns, where the inner moons are stirred and heated and sorted by the energy of the dance. Callisto's inside stayed calm enough to remain partly unmixed, rock and ice still blended in the deep, holding the original arrangement of the moon's birth. It is one of the least altered large bodies we know, a world that kept faith not only with its ancient surface, but with its ancient depths, preserving in its quiet interior something close to the very recipe from which it formed. To know Callisto is to know a thing that has scarcely changed, inside or out, since the solar system was young, a faithful keeper of beginnings, still and cold and complete, resting at the far calm edge of the giant's bright and restless family. It is worth pausing on what it truly means for a world to have no weather, because we so rarely imagine a place without it. On the earth, weather is the great eraser. Rain dissolves the rock and carries it away. Wind lifts the dust and lays it down elsewhere. Frost cracks the stone. Rivers cut the valleys. The sea grinds the shore. Day after day, year after year, the weather of our world quietly takes the past apart and remakes the surface anew. Nothing old survives for long. But on Callisto, there is no weather at all. No rain has ever fallen there. No wind has ever stirred. No river has ever run. No frost has ever cracked. No sea has ever ground the shore. The great eraser was never switched on. And so nothing is taken apart. Nothing is carried away. Nothing is remade. The surface simply keeps, faithfully, everything that has ever happened to it, because there is no weather to wipe it clean. Imagine the consequence of that across 4 billion years. On a world with weather, 4 billion years would erase nearly everything many times over. But on Callisto, 4 billion years pass, and the surface barely notices. A crater carved at the dawn of the planets looks much as it did the day it formed. A ring frozen into the ground at the moment of a great impact still holds its shape. The footprints of the ancient bombardment lie undisturbed, because there has been no weather to disturb them. It is a strange and beautiful thought, a world where the deep past is not buried, but simply lying open on the surface, visible, intact, waiting, kept perfectly by the absence of the very forces that erase the past everywhere else. And there is a stillness in the sky to match the stillness on the ground. No clouds drift across the black heavens of Callisto, for there is no real air to carry them. No storms gather, no fronts move, no haze rises and falls. The same stars hang in the same places, steady and unblinking. The great planet turns slowly in the same patch of sky, never rising, never setting, fixed forever above the hemisphere that faces it. There is no day and night as we know them, no dawn that breaks and dusk that falls in the familiar restless way, only the slow, stately turning of a world that keeps the same calm face toward its giant, and the same calm patience toward the passing ages. Everything holds, everything keeps. Everything rests in a stillness so complete that time itself seems to lie down and grow quiet upon the ancient ground. And yet, for all its stillness, Callisto may be keeping a secret. Beneath that ancient frozen face, beneath the crowded craters and the great silent rings, there may lie something soft and dark and slowly moving. There may lie an ocean, a buried sea of liquid water, hidden deep below the surface, waiting in the dark, never seen, never touched by sunlight, possibly there since the moon was young. It is one of the most surprising things about this seemingly dead world, that inside its cold, quiet body there may flow a hidden sea, and the story of how we came to suspect. It is a gentle tale of patience and faint whispers carried across the dark. The story belongs to a spacecraft named Galileo, sent to honor the man who first saw these moons. In the 1990s, this robotic traveler arrived at Jupiter after a long journey across the inner system, and it settled into a series of looping orbits that carried it close to each of the great moons in turn. Again and again it swept past Io and Europa and Ganymede and Callisto, gathering pictures and measurements, sending its findings home across the enormous gulf to waiting scientists on Earth. And among its instruments was a sensitive detector of magnetism, able to feel the invisible magnetic field that fills the space around Jupiter and to notice how each moon disturbed it. This is where the story grows subtle and lovely. Jupiter is wrapped in a vast and powerful magnetic field, far stronger than the Earth's, a great invisible structure that turns with the planet and sweeps past its moons as they orbit. As the spacecraft flew close to Callisto, it measured this field carefully, and it found something curious. Near Callisto, the field was not quite what it should have been. It was bent, disturbed, altered in a particular way, as though Callisto itself were pushing back against Jupiter's magnetism, generating a faint magnetic response of its own. And here is the gentle key to the whole mystery. A solid ball of rock and ice cannot do that. To bend a magnetic field in this particular way, a body needs something inside it that can conduct electricity, something that the changing field can stir into faint electric currents. And in a cold world like Callisto, the most natural thing that could do this is a layer of salty water. Salt water conducts electricity. Salt water can carry the gentle currents that would push back against Jupiter's field, exactly as Callisto seemed to be doing. So from a faint disturbance in an invisible field sensed by a passing spacecraft, scientists drew a remarkable conclusion. Somewhere beneath the frozen shell of Callisto, there may lie a layer of liquid salty water, a buried ocean deep enough and conductive enough to respond to Jupiter's turning magnetism. It was not seen directly. No camera ever glimpsed it. No drill ever touched it. It was inferred, quietly, from the way the moon whispered back to the great field around it. A hidden sea revealing itself not through sight or sound, but through the faintest tug on something invisible. There is something wonderful in that. In learning of an ocean you cannot see by listening to a magnetic whisper across hundreds of millions of kilometers of dark. In the years since, scientists have continued to study this whisper, testing it, questioning it, making sure it could not be explained some other way. There were other possibilities to rule out, other things that might bend a magnetic field, such as the thin wisps of charged gas that hang above the moon. Researchers built careful models, combining the old measurements with new understanding, and worked patiently to separate the possible causes. And through that careful work, the case for a hidden ocean has grown stronger rather than weaker. The best explanation that fits all of the measurements, the one that accounts for everything observed, remains a layer of conductive liquid water buried somewhere beneath Callisto's surface. The ocean is still hidden, still unconfirmed in the fullest sense, but the evidence for it has held, a quiet, steady signal pointing to a sea in the dark. Let us imagine, gently, the structure of Callisto from the outside in, layer by layer, the way you might peel back the coverings of something precious. At the very top is the surface we have walked across, the ancient crust of ice and rock mixed with dark dust, crowded with craters, hard as stone in the deep cold, the oldest face in the solar system. Beneath that surface, the ice continues downward, a thick shell of frozen water, perhaps tens of kilometers deep, perhaps more, cold near the top, and very slightly warmer as you descend, pressed harder and harder by the weight above. And then, somewhere down in that darkness, the ice may give way to water, the hidden ocean, a layer of liquid, salty and cold and utterly black, never touched by light, lying in a band around the moon far below the surface, estimated to begin perhaps 150 kilometers or so beneath the frozen face. Below the ocean, the moon continues down into its deep interior, that strange, unsorted mixture of rock and ice that never fully separated, growing denser toward the center, holding the original recipe of Callisto's making. There may be a small core of rocky material gathered loosely at the heart, though even this is uncertain, because the moon is so incompletely sorted. The whole structure is a gentle gradient, ice and rock blending downward, with the possible dark sea suspended somewhere in the middle like a hidden layer in a vast frozen cake. It is a quiet architecture, built once long ago and barely disturbed since, holding its secret ocean in the patient dark. Sit for a moment with the strangeness and the beauty of this. From the outside, Callisto looks utterly dead. It is grey and cold and silent, crowded with the scars of ancient violence, a world that stopped moving 4 billion years ago. And yet inside it, perhaps, there flows liquid water, the very substance that on our own world cradles all of life. A sea in the dark, warmed just enough by the faint, deep heat of the moon's slow interior and the gentle pressure of the ice above to keep it from freezing solid. We do not know what is in that sea, or whether anything could ever be. It is far colder and far more isolated than the oceans of livelier Europa, buried under a thicker shell, less stirred, less warmed. But the mere possibility of it transforms how we see this world. The deadest-looking large moon in the solar system may carry within it one of the things we most associate with life. Hidden away, kept safe, kept dark, kept liquid through all the long ages of the moon's stillness. There is a tenderness in imagining that hidden sea, lying there in absolute darkness, never knowing the faint sunlight that touches the surface, never knowing the great rings of Valhalla or the crowded craters or the distant stars. It simply rests in the deep, salty and cold and still, pressed gently by the ice above, holding its place in the body of the moon. It has likely been there for an immense span of time, possibly since near the beginning, a quiet, constant presence beneath all that visible stillness. While the surface gathered its craters and held its ancient face, the ocean lay below, patient and unseen, a second kind of stillness underneath the first. And there is a gentle scientific reason that a hidden ocean might also have shaped the surface we see. When the great impact that formed Valhalla struck the moon, the energy of that blow had to go somewhere, had to spread through the body of Callisto. Some scientists have wondered whether a soft layer deep below, a yielding ocean of water, might have cushioned the moon against such enormous impacts, absorbing some of the shock, helping the surface settle into the calm, frozen rings we see, rather than shattering entirely. In this way, the hidden sea, if it is truly there, may have quietly helped to preserve the very stillness that defines Callisto, softening the greatest blows from within, a buried cushion beneath the frozen face. The ocean we cannot see may have helped keep the world we can see so beautifully intact. We do not yet know all of this for certain. The ocean of Callisto remains a thing of careful inference, a possibility supported by good evidence, but not yet confirmed by direct sight. New missions are on their way across the dark even now. Robotic travelers built to study Jupiter's great moons more closely than ever before, and in the years to come, they will sweep past Callisto and listen again to its magnetic whisper, measure its shape and its gravity more precisely, and perhaps tell us at last whether the hidden sea is truly there. For now, it remains a quiet maybe, a soft uncertainty held in the cold, and there is something restful even in that. Not every mystery needs to be solved tonight. Some things are lovely precisely because they remain hidden, waiting in the dark, holding their secret gently. So as we drift once more above the ancient frozen surface of Callisto, let us hold both truths at once, softly, the way you might hold two warm thoughts as you fall asleep. Above, the stillest face in the solar system, grey and silent and crowded with the memories of 4 billion years. And below, perhaps, a dark and quiet sea, liquid and salty and patient, hidden beneath the ice, never seen, never still in quite the way the surface is still, flowing slowly in the deep. A world that looks completely dead, carrying within it the possibility of water, the gentlest secret a cold moon could keep. There is no need to know more than this tonight. There is only the wonder of it, the soft astonishment that even here, even on this frozen, forgotten world at the far edge of Jupiter's family, there may flow a hidden sea, resting in the dark, keeping its long quiet vigil far below the silent stars. Let us stay a while with the spacecraft and its patient listening, because the way we came to suspect this ocean is itself a kind of quiet marvel. The traveler named Galileo did not set out to find a hidden sea on Callisto. It came to study the whole system, the giant and all its moons, and it gathered its measurements faithfully on every pass. The hint of the ocean came almost as a whisper in the background, a small, unexpected feature in the magnetic readings that scientists noticed and could not easily explain. It took careful thought, and the comparing of many flybys, and the slow ruling out of other possibilities, before the gentle conclusion began to take shape. The ocean did not announce itself. It revealed itself only to those patient enough to listen closely to a faint disturbance in something invisible, drifting in the dark hundreds of millions of kilometers from home. Think of what it means that a layer of salty water, buried perhaps 150 kilometers beneath a frozen crust, could leave any trace at all that we might detect from a passing spacecraft. The ocean never touched the surface. It never sent up a plume we could see, the way livelier moons sometimes do. It simply lay there in the deep dark, and yet because salty water can carry faint electric currents, and because those currents push gently back against Jupiter's great turning magnetic field, the ocean left a fingerprint in the invisible, a subtle bending of the field around the moon. We found a sea by feeling how it nudged a thing we cannot see. There is something almost tender in that, in learning of hidden water through the most delicate of indirect whispers, a secret kept in the deep that gave itself away only in the faintest possible sign. Let us imagine the ocean itself, gently, the way you might imagine a place you will never visit but love to think about. It lies in total darkness, far below the craters and the rings, beneath a thick shell of ancient ice. No light has ever reached it. No sunbeam, however faint, has ever stirred its surface. It is cold, near the freezing point, kept liquid only by the faint, deep warmth of the moon and the gentle pressure of all that ice above. It is salty, which is part of why it can carry the currents that betrayed it. And it is still, or nearly so, a quiet, dark sea suspended within the body of the moon, holding its place across ages, asking nothing, seen by no one, a hidden layer of liquid, keeping its long, patient vigil in the deep. How long has it been there? We cannot say for certain, but it may have lain in the dark since near the beginning, a sea older than complex life on Earth, possibly older than the oldest rocks that still survive on our own world. While the surface of Callisto gathered its craters and held its ancient face through 4 billion years, the ocean lay below, constant and unchanging, a second stillness beneath the first. Two kinds of patience, then, layered one upon the other, the frozen patience of the crowded surface, holding every scar in the cold, and the liquid patience of the hidden sea, holding its dark waters quiet in the deep, both of them keeping their long faith through all the silent ages, neither one ever seen by living eyes, until our own machines came whispering past. And here is the quiet wonder that makes this part of the journey so worth holding as you drift towards sleep. From the outside, Callisto is the very picture of a dead world, grey and cold and silent, scarred and forgotten at the far edge of the giant's family. And yet within it may flow the very substance that on our own world cradles every living thing. Water, liquid water, salty and dark and deep, hidden inside the deadest-looking large moon we know. We do not know whether anything could ever stir in such a sea, far colder and more isolated than the warmer ocean of nearby Europa, locked beneath a thicker shell, less stirred, less fed with warmth. The hidden ocean of Callisto may be a perfectly still and lifeless sea, but its mere presence transforms the world above it, turning a place that looks utterly dead into a place that carries, deep within, the gentlest possibility of all, a hidden reservoir of the stuff of life, kept safe and dark and liquid through the long, cold patience of the ages. The hidden sea of Callisto also invites a gentle comparison with its neighbor Europa, and the comparison is a tender one. Europa, closer to Jupiter, is the famous ocean moon, its sea kept warm and stirring by the constant flexing of the giant's dance, its shell thin and cracked and young, its waters perhaps churned and fed and lively in the dark. Callisto's ocean, if it is truly there, is a quieter thing entirely. It lies under a far thicker shell. It is colder, more isolated, less stirred, fed by only the faintest deep warmth. Where Europa's sea may be a restless and energetic ocean, Callisto's may be a still and patient one, a calm, dark reservoir that has simply held its place in the deep without much motion across the ages. Two hidden oceans, then, two kinds of buried water, one lively and one serene, each cradled inside a frozen moon, each invisible from the surface, each a quiet marvel in the cold. We have learned, too, that the discovery of this ocean came in the same patient way that so much of what we know about Callisto came, slowly, carefully, by indirect signs gathered over many passes and studied for years. There was no single dramatic moment of revelation, no plume erupting before a camera, no drill breaking through to dark water. There was only a faint, persistent feature in the magnetic readings, noticed and questioned and tested, and slowly accepted, until the gentle conclusions settled into place. And even now it remains a careful maybe, a well-supported possibility rather than a certainty, the kind of quiet, uncertain truth that science holds gently while it waits for more. There is something restful in that humility, in a fact that does not shout but simply waits, patient as the moon itself, content to be uncertain a while longer in the dark. New travelers are crossing the great gulf even now. Machines built to study Jupiter and its icy moons more closely than ever before, and in the years to come they will sweep past Callisto and listen again to its faint magnetic whisper, measure its shape and its gravity with new care, and perhaps tell us at last whether the hidden sea is truly there and how deep it lies. We will learn more, we always learn more, but there is no need to rush toward the answer tonight. The ocean has waited 4 billion years in the dark, and it can wait a little longer for us to be certain of it. For now, it is enough simply to hold the wonder of it, the soft astonishment that even here, even on this still grey, forgotten world, there may flow a quiet, hidden sea, resting in the deep, keeping its long, patient vigil far beneath the silent stars. Let us hold both truths together, one more time, gently, the way you might cradle two warm thoughts as sleep draws near. Above, the stillest face in the solar system, grey and silent, crowded with the memories of 4 billion years, and below, perhaps, a dark and quiet sea, salty and liquid and patient, hidden beneath the ice, flowing slowly in the deep where no light has ever reached. A world that looks completely dead, carrying within it the gentlest secret a cold moon could keep. There is no need to know more than this tonight. There is only the wonder of it, soft and complete, and the deep comfort of a hidden sea resting quietly in the dark, keeping its faithful watch beneath the ancient frozen face of the stillest world we know. We have said that Callisto does not change, and across the great span of human time that is perfectly true. Nothing you could ever watch on Callisto would move. No eruption, no quake, no flowing water, no drifting cloud. And yet, if we slow our sense of time down to the deep, slow tempo of the moon itself, if we let a single moment stretch to 1,000,000 years, then even Callisto reveals the faintest, gentlest kind of change. Not the violent change of its burning siblings, something far quieter, a slow sculpting by light and by the patient loss of ice, so gradual that it takes the deep clock of the solar system to even notice it happening. Let us turn now to these softest of forces, the ones that have been delicately reshaping Callisto across ages while it appeared to lie perfectly still. The first of these gentle forces is the slow vanishing of ice. The surface of Callisto is a mixture of ice and dark rocky material, the two blended together across the ground. And in the deep cold and the faint sunlight, the ice can slowly disappear, not by melting, for it is far too cold for that, but by a quieter process in which the frozen water turns directly into vapor and drifts away into space. This is called sublimation, and it is the same gentle thing that happens to dry ice on Earth, or to the frost that fades from a cold morning window without ever seeming to melt. Over enormous stretches of time, the faint warmth of the distant sun is enough to coax the surface ice of Callisto to sublimate away, grain by grain, molecule by molecule, lifting off the moon and vanishing into the dark, far too slowly to ever be seen, yet relentlessly across billions of years. And as the ice quietly leaves, something is left behind. The dark rocky material that was mixed in with the ice cannot sublimate. It is not made of frozen water. And so as the ice around it vanishes, the dark dust remains, accumulating on the surface, gathering into a growing blanket of fine dark grime. This is part of why Callisto is so much darker than its bright icy siblings. Where Europa gleams a brilliant white, Callisto is a dim and dusty grey, its surface coated in the patient residue of all the ice that has slowly disappeared. The dark material left standing as the bright ice quietly withdrew. The moon is, in a sense, slowly concentrating its own darkness, the dust building up grain by grain as the ice that hid it fades away. This slow loss of ice does something remarkable to the shape of the ground as well. In certain places on Callisto, where the surface has been studied most closely, the relentless sublimation has carved the landscape into strange and delicate forms. As the ice vanishes unevenly, the spots where dark material has gathered are protected, shaded, slowed in their loss, while the cleaner ice around them sublimates faster. And so over vast ages the ground is etched into a field of small spires and knobs and pinnacles, spikes of icy material standing where the dust protected them, the cleaner ice between them eaten away. These features are soft and small and ghostly, a landscape sculpted not by fire or flood or wind, but by the simple patient withdrawal of ice across unimaginable time. They are perhaps the most delicate sculptures in the solar system, made by nothing but sunlight and slowness, standing in the dim grey light like a quiet frozen garden. Above all of this lies the faintest breath of an atmosphere, so thin it barely deserves the name. Callisto is not airless in the absolute sense, for around it hangs a wisp of gas, mostly carbon dioxide, and a trace of oxygen, released slowly from the surface and held loosely by the moon's gentle gravity. But this atmosphere is so thin that it is closer to the emptiness of space than to any air you have ever breathed. It would not stir a single grain of dust. It would not carry a sound. It would not press upon your skin or move a strand of hair. It is the merest exhalation of a world, a faint chemical haze clinging to the surface, constantly leaking away into space and constantly being replenished from the ice and dust below. And yet it is there, a tenuous veil around the moon, the softest possible atmosphere, the quiet breathing of a world that otherwise lies perfectly still. Think of how slow all of this is. The sublimation of the ice, the gathering of the dark dust, the carving of the spires, the gentle cycling of that thin breath of gas. None of it happens in a human lifetime. None of it happens in 1,000 human lifetimes. These are changes measured against the deep clock of the solar system, processes that take millions and billions of years to leave their mark. If you stood on Callisto for your entire life, watching the same patch of ground, you would see nothing happen at all. The spires would not grow, the dust would not deepen, the ice would not visibly retreat. You would see only stillness, perfect and complete. And yet, given enough time, given the patience of ages, these silent forces do their gentle work, sculpting the moon so slowly that the sculpting itself is a kind of stillness, a change so gradual it is almost indistinguishable from rest. There is a deep calm in contemplating change this slow. We are used to a world that hurries, where things grow and fade within seasons, where a day brings weather and a year brings transformation. But Callisto offers a different rhythm entirely, the rhythm of the very slow, where a single feature of the landscape might take longer to form than complex life has existed on the earth. To imagine it is to step outside the frantic pace of ordinary time and into something vast and unhurried, where there is no urgency at all, where 1,000,000 years is a small unit and nothing needs to be finished by any particular moment. It is the pace of deep geology, the pace of the cosmos itself, and there is something profoundly restful in letting your mind settle into it, in trading the rush of the day for the long, slow breath of a world that measures its changes in eons. Picture the surface of Callisto under this slow sculpting, lit by the faint, distant Sunday, the dim grey plains, dusted dark by ages of vanished ice, the delicate spires standing in their quiet fields, carved by nothing but light and time, the great craters slowly softening at their rims, their sharp edges gently rounded by the patient loss of ice across billions of years, so slowly that they still look ancient and crisp to our eyes. The thin haze of gas hanging close to the ground, invisible, soundless, the merest breath of a world. Everything here is gentle, everything here is slow. Even the forces of change move with such patience that they seem to be at peace, sculpting the moon the way water shapes stone, not through force but through the simple, unhurried persistence of ages. And notice how this softens the very idea of a dead world. We sometimes call Callisto dead, and in the sense that it has no volcanoes, and no shifting crust, and no fresh activity, that word is fair. But it is not truly motionless, not entirely. It breathes its thin, faint breath. Its ice slowly lifts away into space. Its dark dust slowly gathers. Its delicate spires slowly form. It is less a dead world than a sleeping one, a world whose processes have slowed almost, but not quite, to nothing, a world that stirs so gently and so rarely that its stirring is itself a kind of deep sleep. There is movement here, but it is the movement of something at profound rest, the faint, slow shifting of a body deep in dreamless slumber, so quiet it can barely be told from perfect stillness. Let that image carry you now, softly, toward your own rest. A world that changes so slowly it seems not to change at all. A world that breathes so faintly its breath cannot be felt. A world being sculpted by light alone, across spans of time so vast they soothe the mind simply to imagine them. There is no hurry on Callisto. There has never been any hurry on Callisto. The ice will take its billions of years to vanish, and the spires will take their ages to form, and none of it needs to happen tonight, or this year, or this age. Everything has time. Everything has all the time there could ever be. And in that boundless patience there is a deep and gentle comfort. The comfort of knowing that some things in the universe simply rest and change only in the slowest of whispers, and are in no hurry at all to become anything other than exactly what they peacefully, patiently already are. Let us imagine standing among those delicate spires for a moment, in the soft grey light, where the slow loss of ice has carved the ground into its strange and gentle forms. They would rise around you like a quiet, frozen garden, small pinnacles and knobs of icy material, each one sheltered and preserved by a cap of dark dust, while the cleaner ice between them slowly withdrew into space. There would be no sound, no wind to whistle through them, no movement at all. They would simply stand, patient and pale, sculptures made by nothing but faint sunlight and the deep slowness of time. To walk among them would be to walk through a gallery whose every piece took longer to make than complex life has existed on the earth. Each spire a monument to patience, carved grain by grain across an unimaginable span. And consider the gentleness of the force that made them. There was no chisel here, no hammer, no rushing water, no grinding ice, no violent hand. There was only sunlight, faint and distant, coaxing the frozen water to lift away molecule by molecule, and the simple fact that the dust shaded some spots more than others. From these two soft things, light and shadow, the whole delicate landscape was carved. It is perhaps the gentlest sculpting in the entire solar system, a shaping so slow and so soft that it can barely be told from stillness, and yet given the patience of billions of years it has written real form into the ground, standing pinnacles where once there was only crowded crater plain. There is a deep comfort in contemplating change, this gentle and this slow. We live our lives at a frantic pace, surrounded by things that grow and fade and rush and change within hours and days and seasons. But Callisto moves to a different clock entirely, a clock so slow that a single feature of its landscape might take longer to form than the whole history of life on our world. To let your mind settle into that tempo, even for a few breaths, is to step out of the hurry of the day and into something vast and unhurried and calm. On Callisto, nothing needs to be finished by morning. Nothing needs to be finished by the end of an age. Everything has all the time there could ever be, and there is a profound and gentle peace in that, the peace of a world where even change itself has slowed to the softest of whispers. Picture, too, the faint, thin breath of the moon, that wisp of gas clinging close to the surface, far too tenuous to feel or hear. It rises slowly from the ice, and dust hangs for a while as the merest haze, and slowly leaks away into the dark, only to be gently replenished from below. It is the quietest breathing imaginable, the soft, slow respiration of a sleeping world, in and out across the ages, so faint it can barely be measured, so gentle it would not stir a single grain of the dark dust beneath it. A world that breathes this softly is not truly dead. It is sleeping deeply, dreamlessly, its faint breath the only sign that somewhere in its cold body the slow, quiet processes of a moon still gently turn. And so we come to see that even this still and frozen world is not entirely without motion. It breathes its faint, thin breath. Its ice lifts slowly into the dark. Its dust gathers grain by grain. Its delicate spires form across the ages. Its great craters soften by the smallest degree at their ancient rims. None of it is fast. None of it could ever be seen in a human lifetime, or 1,000 lifetimes laid end to end. But it is there, the gentlest stirring of a world at the very deepest rest, change so slow it is almost indistinguishable from peace. Callisto is less a dead world than a sleeping one, and to watch it, even in the mind, is to be lulled by the soft, slow rhythm of something at profound and lasting rest, a world breathing faintly in the dark, in no hurry at all to be anything other than exactly, peacefully, what it already is. There is one more gentle truth about the surface worth holding here. The dark, dusty coating that has gathered over the ages does more than darken the moon. It also protects it. As the loose dust builds up, it forms a kind of blanket over the ice below, shading it, slowing the loss of the deeper layers, sealing in what remains. In this way, the very process that strips the surface also shelters what lies beneath. The vanishing of the top layer, leaving behind a protective covering for everything below. It is a slow and self-quieting cycle, the moon settling ever more deeply into stillness, wrapping itself in its own dark dust like a sleeper drawing up a blanket in the cold. Imagine the whole surface seen from gently above, then, in the soft and distant light, the dim grey plains, dusted dark by ages of vanished ice, the pale, delicate spires standing in their quiet fields, the crowded craters lying peacefully, their rims softened by the smallest measure across the eons, the faint haze of the thin breath hanging close above it all, invisible and silent. And over everything, the long, slow patience of a world whose every change moves at the tempo of the cosmos itself, unhurried, gentle, almost indistinguishable from rest. There is nothing harsh here, nothing sudden, nothing that strains or rushes. Even the forces of change have learned the deep calm of the place and move with the softness of something half asleep. Let that softness carry you now toward your own deep rest, a world sculpted by light alone, across spans of time so vast that simply to imagine them is to feel the mind grow quiet and slow. A world that breathes so faintly its breath cannot be felt, that changes so slowly, its changing is a kind of stillness that wraps itself in its own dark dust and settles ever deeper into peace. There is no hurry on Callisto, and there is no hurry here in this quiet where you lie. Everything has time. Everything has all the time there could ever be. And in that boundless, gentle patience there is a deep comfort, the comfort of knowing that some things in the universe simply rest, sculpted softly by the slowest of forces, in no hurry at all to be anything other than exactly what they peacefully already are. It is worth holding, too, just how dark Callisto has become through all this slow, patient loss. Among the 4 great moons of Jupiter, it is the dimmest, the one that reflects the least light, its surface muted and grey where its siblings gleam. Bright Europa shines almost white, its young ice clean and gleaming. But Callisto, ancient and undisturbed, has gathered its dark dust across the ages until its whole face is a soft, deep grey, the colour of old ash, the colour of long exposure, the color of a surface that has simply been itself for longer than almost anything else in the solar system. Its darkness is the darkness of age, earned slowly, a quiet patina laid down by 4 billion years of vanished ice and gathered dust. And in the faint distant sunlight that darkness takes on a gentle beauty, a muted softness, the calm grey tone of a world that has nothing left to prove and is content simply to be old and still and quiet. Picture the surface once more in that soft grey light, and let the picture slow your breathing as you look. The dim plains, dusted dark across the eons. The pale, delicate spires standing in their quiet fields, carved by light alone. The crowded craters lying peacefully, their ancient rims softened by the smallest measure. The faint, thin breath of the moon hanging close and invisible above it all. And over everything, the long, slow patience of a world that changes only in the gentlest of whispers, so slowly that its changing is itself a kind of rest. There is nothing harsh here, nothing sudden. Even the forces that shape the ground have learned the deep calm of the place and move with the softness of something half asleep, sculpting the moon the way the slowest water shapes the oldest stone, gently, patiently, in no hurry at all to be finished. And so the slow, soft sculpting goes on, age after age, as it has since the beginning, and as it will for ages still to come, gentle beyond measure, patient beyond imagining, in no hurry at all. So what, in the end, is Callisto? We have walked across its crowded ancient face, traced the great frozen rings of Valhalla, asked why it stopped, glimpsed the hidden sea beneath the ice, and watched the slow sculpting of light across the ages. And as our journey draws toward its quiet close, let us gather all of it together and ask what this still grey world truly means, why it matters that somewhere far out in the dark there is a moon that has held its face unchanged since the dawn of the planets. The deepest answer is this: Callisto is a memory. It is the keeper of the oldest record we have, a surface that remembers what every other world has forgotten. On the Earth, the early history of the solar system has been almost entirely erased, washed away by water and wind, buried by drifting continents, melted and remade so many times that the first chapters are simply gone. The same is true on most worlds. Their faces have been wiped clean and rewritten again and again, and the deep past has vanished from them. But Callisto kept it. Callisto held still through all the long ages, and so its surface is a faithful page from the beginning, a record of what the solar system was like, when it was young and wild and full of falling debris. To study Callisto is to read that page directly, to look upon the early days of the planets not through guesswork but through a surface that was actually there and actually remembers. Think of the dawn that this surface recalls. The sun was young then, the planets were still forming, and the space around them was thick with falling debris, a wild and violent morning for the whole system. On nearly every world, that morning has been painted over by later ages of fire and water and shifting ground. We know it happened, but we cannot see it directly anywhere else, for the evidence has been swept away, except here. Callisto held its surface still through all of it, and so it kept the record whole. Its crowded craters are a direct image of that ancient storm, preserved exactly, a kind of photograph of the dawn of the planets, developed in ice and held faithfully in the cold for 4 billion years. In this way, Callisto is a kind of library, a quiet archive of the early system. It holds in its craters the record of the Great Bombardment. It holds in its unsorted interior the original recipe of how a large moon was built. It holds perhaps in its hidden sea a sample of ancient water, locked away since near the beginning. Every other world has thrown its old books away, remade itself, moved on. Callisto kept the whole collection, dusty and dim and intact, waiting in the cold for readers to arrive. There is something deeply moving in that, in a world whose entire role, if a world can be said to have a role, seems to be simply to remember, to hold the past safe, to keep faith with the beginning long after everyone else has let it go. To value such a thing is to value patience itself. Callisto did nothing dramatic to earn its importance. It did not erupt or crack or remake itself in a blaze of activity. It simply stayed, faithfully, holding its ancient face through age after age, while everything around it changed and forgot. And precisely because it did nothing, because it stayed perfectly still, it became the most reliable witness we have to the beginning. There is a quiet lesson folded into that, the gentle truth that sometimes the most valuable thing a body can do is simply to remain, to keep steady and unchanged, while the rest of the world rushes on and lets the past slip away. And there is another, gentler reason that explorers look fondly toward Callisto, a reason that has nothing to do with the past and everything to do with peace. Of all the great moons of Jupiter, Callisto is the calmest and the safest. Its siblings closer in are bathed in a fierce, invisible storm of energetic particles, trapped and whirled by Jupiter's powerful field, so intense around Io and Europa that it would be perilous for any visitor to linger there. But Callisto orbits far out, beyond the worst of that storm, in a quieter and gentler region. It sits at the calm edge of the danger, sheltered by its own distance, a safe harbor in a hazardous neighborhood. And so, when people dream of one day sending explorers to study Jupiter and its family up close, they often think of Callisto as the place where visitors might pause in relative safety, a peaceful shore on the calm side of a stormy sea. Picture that distant future for a moment, softly, as a thing to drift toward in the mind. A small, quiet outpost resting on the grey plains of Callisto, sheltered by the moon's gentle remove from Jupiter's fury. The great planet hanging huge and serene in the black sky above, its slow bands turning, the faint silver sunlight falling across the ancient craters. And all around, the same deep stillness that has held this world for 4 billion years, now offering shelter and quiet to a handful of distant travelers who came all this way to rest in the calm and to read the long memory written in the ground. It is a peaceful vision, fitting and gentle, the stillest world in the solar system becoming, at last, a place of refuge and repose at the far edge of the storm. But you do not need to travel so far to share in that peace tonight. You need only carry the thought of Callisto with you as you drift towards sleep. Picture it now, that far quiet world, turning slowly in the dim light, far from every storm, holding its ancient face in perfect stillness. Picture the great frozen rings of Valhalla spreading silently toward the horizon, a ripple held for 4 billion years. Picture the crowded craters lying peacefully in the soft grey light, each one a memory kept faithfully in the cold. Picture the hidden sea below, dark and salty and still, keeping its quiet vigil beneath the ice. And picture how all of it simply rests, asks nothing, hurries nowhere, content to be exactly what it is, a world at perfect peace in the deep calm dark. There is a gift in that picture, freely offered to anyone who pauses to receive it. It is the gentle reminder that stillness is not emptiness, that rest is not failure, that a thing can hold perfectly still for ages, and in that stillness be whole and complete and at peace. Callisto did not need to burn like Io or crack like Europa to matter. It mattered by remaining, by keeping faith, by simply being still and holding its memory through all the long dark years. And tonight, lying here, you do not need to do anything either. You do not need to solve or finish or hurry toward anything at all. You are allowed, like Callisto, simply to be still, to rest, to let the long calm settle over you, complete and whole, and asking nothing of you in return. Let us sit for a moment with the sheer depth of the time involved, because it is the time that makes Callisto so calming to contemplate. 4 billion years is a span the mind cannot truly hold. If you tried to count the years one by one, a single year each second, you would count for longer than a human lifetime and not come close, not even to a fraction of it. Try instead to picture the history of the earth laid out as a single long day. In that day, the continents would drift and collide many times over, the oceans would fill, and the great storms would rage. Life would appear in the morning and spend the whole day changing, simple at first, then complex, then teeming, then us, arriving only in the final flicker before midnight. And through that entire day, from the first hour to the last, Callisto would not change at all. Its face at midnight would be the same as its face at dawn, the same craters, the same rings, the same calm grey plains, a whole day of earthly history, and the still moon holding perfectly steady through every hour of it. There is a deep comfort in that kind of permanence, a comfort we rarely get to feel. So much of our world is fleeting. Things arrive and pass, grow and fade, change before we are ready. But Callisto offers the opposite, a constancy almost beyond imagining, a world that simply remains, faithful and unchanging, across spans of time that dwarf everything we know. To rest your mind upon it, even for a few breaths, is to lean against something utterly steady, something that was here long before you and will be here long after, holding its calm grey peace through every age. There is a kind of shelter in that thought, the shelter of the enduring, the quiet reassurance that somewhere in the universe there is a thing that does not rush and does not vanish, but simply, faithfully stays. Consider how long it took us to truly know this world, and how gently that knowing came. For all the ages of human history, Callisto was hidden, invisible, in the glare of bright Jupiter, unknown and unimagined. Then, 4 centuries ago, it became a moving point of light, seen through a small glass tube on cold winter nights. Then, for 300 years more, it remained little more than that point, a faint grey speck too small to show its face. And only in our own age, when our machines at last crossed the great gulf and came close enough to see, did Callisto finally reveal itself, its crowded craters, its great frozen rings, its dim grey plains. We have known this world's true face for only a handful of decades, the briefest moment against the 4 billion years it has been waiting. And still we are only beginning to read it. Still we send new travelers across the dark to learn a little more, patiently, gently, year by year. There is a quiet humility in that, and a quiet wonder too. Out there, far beyond the bright familiar planets, this still grey world turned and waited through all the long ages of the earth, keeping its ancient face, holding its deep memory, never asking to be noticed. The dinosaurs came and went, and Callisto did not change. The ice ages rose and fell, and Callisto did not change. Whole civilizations of our own kind were born and flowered and faded, and through all of it Callisto simply turned, slow and patient, holding the same calm expression it has held since before there were oceans on the earth. And only now, in this small bright sliver of time, have we finally looked out across the dark and truly seen it. The oldest face in the solar system, waiting quietly where it has always been. Imagine spending a single long night upon it, if a night so still can even be imagined. The faint distant sun would hang low and small, throwing its pale silver light across the craters. The great planet would fill its portion of the black sky, vast and serene, its slow bands barely turning. The stars would shine steady and unblinking, sharp and clear in the airless dark. And the silence would settle over everything, total and complete, a silence 4 billion years deep. You would feel the lightness of the gentle gravity, the soft give of the dark dust beneath you, the hard ancient ice below. And most of all, you would feel the stillness, the profound, unhurried peace of a place where nothing moves and nothing rushes and nothing needs anything at all. It would be, perhaps, the most restful place a person could ever stand, a whole world built of patience, sharing its long calm with anyone willing to grow still enough to receive it. And even now, our patient looking continues. New robotic travelers are making their long, slow way across the dark toward Jupiter and its family of moons, built to study these icy worlds more closely than any machine before them. In the years to come, they will sweep past Callisto again and again, peering at its ancient surface, measuring its faint magnetic whisper, weighing the evidence for the hidden sea, mapping the great rings and the crowded craters in finer detail than we have ever managed. We will come to know this still grey world a little better, gently, year by year, the way you come to know an old friend more deeply over a long and quiet acquaintance. There is no rush in it. Callisto has waited 4 billion years, and it will wait a little longer, patient as ever, while we learn to read its long memory, one careful page at a time. Picture those travelers drawing near, small and quiet against the vast dark, approaching the calm grey moon at the far edge of the giant's family. Picture Callisto turning slowly to meet them, holding the same face it has held since the dawn of the planets, offering up its ancient surface to be seen and understood at last. There is something deeply peaceful in that meeting. The patient world and the patient seekers, neither one in any hurry, the long memory finally being read by those who travelled so far to read it. And whatever they find, whatever new wonders the years reveal, the deepest truth of Callisto will remain the one we already know. It is a world at rest. It is a world that stopped long ago and found its peace and has held that peace ever since, faithfully, quietly, asking nothing, keeping everything, turning slowly on through the endless dark. That is the gift Callisto offers as our journey draws to its close. Not excitement, for there is none here. Not danger, For this is the safest of the great moons. Only stillness, deep and complete and freely given, the stillness of a world that found its peace long ago and has held it faithfully ever since. We came a very long way to find it, across all that cold and all that dark, and what we found at the end was not a place of drama, but a place of rest. A quiet grey world turning slowly in the faint light, asking nothing, holding everything, keeping its long memories safe in the cold. And now, having travelled all this way together, we can do the most fitting thing of all. We can grow as still as Callisto and rest. So let your body grow heavy now, the way the cold settles deep and patient over the surface of that far quiet moon. Let your breathing slow and soften, like the faint thin breath of a world at rest. Feel the weight of the day drifting away from you, lifting off gently into the dark the way the ice lifts slowly from Callisto across the ages, quietly, without effort, without strain. There is nowhere you need to be. There is nothing you need to do. There is only this quiet and this rest, and the soft grey peace of a world that has been still for longer than you can imagine, holding you company in the dark. Let your shoulders soften. Let your hands grow still. Let the small weight of the day slip from you the way a faint mist lifts from the ground and vanishes into the dark. Far away, the still old moon turns slowly on, as it has always turned, keeping its long, quiet watch over the oldest face in the solar system. It asks nothing of you. It only keeps its peace and shares it freely with anyone willing to grow as still as it is. If you would like to drift on a little further into the quiet, there is another gentle journey waiting for you whenever you are ready, another far and peaceful place to wander as you fall asleep. But there is no hurry for that either. It will keep. Everything will keep. For now there is only Callisto, turning slowly in the faint and distant light, far out at the calm edge of Jupiter's great bright family, holding its ancient face in perfect stillness, asking nothing, keeping its long, quiet memories safe in the cold. Let each breath grow a little slower than the one before. Let the quiet of that far world settle into the quiet of this room, until the two are one and the same, a single gentle stillness holding you softly in the dark. There is nothing left to think about now, nothing left to carry, nothing left to do, and nothing at all left to reach for in the quiet dark. The day is finished and the night is yours, as deep and calm as the long night of Callisto, and you may simply rest in it, weightless and warm, while the still old moon keeps its patient watch far away. Rest now. Let the grey light fade. Let the great planet hang silent in the black sky. Let the still old moon turn slowly on, as it has always turned, as it will always turn. You are calm. You are heavy. You are warm and safe and held. And out there in the dark, a world that stopped 4 billion years ago turns gently on through the night, keeping watch at peace, while you let go at last and drift softly, slowly, sweetly down into sleep. Sleep now. All is still. All is well. Good night.